Before we start to look at transformations, that is, the relationship between sentence patterns, let's take a look at the basic structure of English. English is basically an SVO language, subject, verb, object. That means the normal sentence structure is that the subject, someone or something that does something, comes first, then comes the verb, that's the action part of the sentence, and after that comes the object, the thing that's acted on. And here's an example. The boy reads the book. That's about the simplest and most basic structure for an English sentence, and that's the kind of structure we're going to look at today. Even then, though, we're going to need to lay down a few conditions. I'm going to use verbs that are transitive, that is, verbs that take an object. So, not verbs like sleep, where you just sleep, you don't sleep something. But verbs like eat, you eat something. And I'm going to use them in their base or plain form, that is, without to at the beginning, and without any extra bits at the end, like eat-ing. We'll just put the plain form eat into the box and make any changes we need to the structure later on. So, in go the verbs. And now, the nouns. These will be the subject or the object of the sentence. I'll use common nouns to start with, that is, not names like John or London, and not pronouns like he or she or it. And I'll use concrete nouns, things we can see and touch, animals, humans, and inanimate objects like cat or house or teacher. I'll choose things we can count, like we can have 2 cats or 2 houses or 2 teachers. But to start with, I'll use them in the singular form. We can count them, but in each case, there's just one of them. Okay, so let's put the nouns in. Alright, I'm almost ready. I just need to add a couple of things to the structure. In English, nouns commonly need something called a determiner. If you're not sure what that is, don't worry, we'll come back to it later. I'm going to use a type of determiner called the definite article. That's the word the. I'm also going to add an inflection, a verb ending. I'm going to use the verb ending for the present tense, third person singular. Again, if you don't fully understand this, don't worry about it. I'll explain it more later on. And finally, we're going to add the same determiner, the, to the object. And that's it. That's all we need. We're now ready to start generating language using this structure. Okay, so we've got our basic structure. Now let's do something with it. Shazam! Shazam! Shazam!
That doesn't even make sense.
What are you talking about?
Fish can't climb trees.
Of course they can. Happens all the time where I come from.
It's kind of weird.
Yeah, it's weird.
Let's see you do another one.
Yeah, come on.
Okay, this is a good one. I think you're going to like it. Shazam! Shazam! Shazam!
It still pretty strange. Yeah, hamburgers don't eat boys. What should we do? I know. Let's make our own sentences. Yes, come on. Show us the words and we'll do it ourselves.
Oh, okay. Is that better?
Yes, I think we can do something with that. Let's see. How about the dog sees the bird? Yes, at least that makes sense. Let me try one. The policeman likes the cat. It's okay, but it's a bit boring. Can we have some more words, please?
Yes, have as many as you want. Here you go. How's that?
Yes, that's better. The man climbs the ladder. The teacher plays the guitar. The boy lays the table. The doctor drives the car. I know. Let's check the dictionary and find more words. Yes, come on. The sun fills the sky. The snow covers the mountain. The farmer plants the seed. The horse pulls the plough.
Okay, so we've been introduced to the basic subject-verb-object structure of the English sentence, and we picked out certain kinds of verbs and nouns in order to be able to construct a very simple sentence. We decided that we would use the definite article as a determiner, and that the inflection would be for the third person singular of the present tense, so that we were going to be able to make sentences like this.
You cheated. Yes, you cheated.
Well, only a little bit. What was the problem?
Well, look at this. It doesn't work, right? And this one. It was wrong.
Yes, that's true. Carry makes carries with an IES at the end, and touch is touches with an ES.
Yes, and have makes has, and do makes does.
But it's basically the same sort of thing, isn't it really?
But why didn't you tell us?
What? And deprive you of the joy of discovering it for yourselves?
The joy of... He's mad, I tell you. Completely mad.
All right, okay, well, these are details. Don't worry too much about them. I'll keep this one here. Do, does. That may come in useful later on. But let's move on for now. Before I go on to a proper transformation, you might like to look at a couple of variations that we can make. For example, instead of the boy, we can say a boy. That's the indefinite article instead of the definite article.
Oh, that looks interesting. What's the difference?
Well, the boy basically means that boy, and a boy could just be any boy.
Oh, that looks fun. I might try that. So can we say a book as well?
Yes, of course. If it's any book, then you can say a book instead of the book.
Oh, thank you. And can I say the boy reads a book then?
Yes, of course you can. If you know which boy it is, but you don't know which book, then the boy reads a book. Okay, now here's another little trick for you that you might find useful. Let's change the conditions here a little bit. Instead of saying we want nouns in the singular, let's allow for plural nouns as well. And how does that work? Well, the usual way of forming the plural is to add s to the noun. And if we make the subject plural, then the s on the verb has to go. One boy reads, two boys read.
And can they read more than one book? Can we say the boys read the books?
Yes, of course. And we can have one boy reading more than one book.
What about our boys read our books?
No. We can't use "a" in plural sentences. If it's a particular group of boys, we say the boys. If it's an indefinite group of boys, we say some boys. And if we're talking about boys, or boys and books in general, we just say boys and books, with no determiner at all.
All right. And what about the transformation? You said you were going to show us a proper transformation.
Oh, yes. It's like this. Isn't it beautiful?
But you've got to explain it.
Sorry, I've got to go. I'll explain it next time.
Wait. Oh.
So far, we've studied the basic subject-verb-object structure, and we've looked at some simple variations like plural nouns and indefinite articles. There are lots of other variations which we'll be coming back to later on, but let's go back now to a singular noun subject with the definite article. The boy reads the book. And we'll work through the first, most basic transformation in English grammar. We're going to need to introduce something called an auxiliary verb. This is something I'll be explaining in more detail later on, but basically an auxiliary verb is something that helps the main verb in some way. In this case, I'll be using the auxiliary do in its third-person singular form of does. Do is also a main verb, and as a main verb it has a meaning. But when it's acting as an auxiliary verb, it's better to think of its function, what it does, than to think of its meaning. Do, as an auxiliary, has three basic functions. The first function is to give emphasis to the verb. Note how the main verb now takes its infinitive or base form, and the S of the main verb moves over into the auxiliary does. This use of the verb do makes the main verb stronger. We typically use it when there's some doubt about whether the main verb is true, and we want to say strongly that it is true. The boy does read the book. If we want to make the emphasis very strong, we can also add an exclamation mark at the end of the sentence, but this is optional. The second function of do is to show the negative form of the verb. If it is not true that the boy reads the book, then we simply add not to the auxiliary. The boy does not read the book. And last but not least, we use the auxiliary to make questions. Now this is, at last, a true transformation. The sentence is transformed by moving the auxiliary to the beginning of the sentence in front of the verb. Does the boy read the book? In this case, we also need to add a question mark at the end of the sentence. Do is just one of several auxiliary verbs, and we will be looking at them later on. For now, though, just practice making examples with do. The man does climb the ladder. The boy doesn't lay the table. Does the teacher play the guitar? And make your own examples too. Keep on practicing until you're confident about it. Okay, so now we've got a basic structure, a pattern we can work with. We can make simple statements and questions using this structure, and all we need now is words to fit into the structure. So I'll leave you to find the words you need and make your own example sentences. But before you start, let me go over it all in detail.
All right.
Here's a simple sentence. The cat climbs the tree. And then we introduce the auxiliary do that sets off a rule that says
The inflection on the main verb gets taken away and put onto the auxiliary.
yes, that's right, you've got it. Well done.
So climbs becomes climb and do becomes does.
That's right. Very good. The main verb goes into its base form and the inflection goes onto the auxiliary. That gives the sentence emphasis. The cat does climb the tree. We could use that if, for example, someone thinks the cat doesn't climb the tree and we want to disagree. To make the sentence negative, we just add not to the auxiliary. The cat does not, or in conversation, doesn't climb the tree. And to ask a question, we move the auxiliary to the beginning. Does the cat climb the tree? Okay, now we learned that the means a particular one. So if we know which cat it is, we'll say the cat. But if it's any cat, we can say a cat. So we get a cat does climb the tree, for emphasis. A cat doesn't climb the tree, in the negative. And does a cat climb the tree, for the question. And of course, we can change it from the tree, that is one particular tree, to a tree, any tree. So we can have a cat does climb a tree, a cat doesn't climb a tree, and does a cat climb a tree?
I like the and a, don't you? Well, sometimes, but I still get very confused about it all. Yes, I think it's one of those things we need to practice a lot before we really understand it.
We also learned that we can make the noun plural, so cat can become cats. More than one cat. When we do that, the verb changes. It doesn't need an S on the end anymore. So when we bring in the auxiliary do, we don't need to add the inflection on the main verb because there is no inflection. We can leave do as it is and show emphasis by saying,
The cats do climb the tree.
that's right. And the negative form would be,
The cats don't climb the tree.
good. And the question,
Do the cats climb the tree?
exactly. And if we want to talk about cats in general, we can take out the and just say cats climb the tree. So we get cats do climb the tree, for emphasis, and cats don't climb the tree, for negative, and do cats climb the tree, for the question.
So that would be cats in general climbing one particular tree.
Yes, any cats, but just one particular tree.
And could they climb more than one tree?
Of course, then it would be cats do climb the trees, cats don't climb the trees, and do cats climb the trees?
But they would still be a particular group of trees, wouldn't they? Like the trees in someone's garden or something. Suppose it was trees in general.
Well, you'd do the same as you did for cats and take out the.
So we'd say cats climb trees. Which would become cats do climb trees for emphasis. Cats don't climb trees in the negative. And do cats climb trees would be the question. Is that right?
Yes, that's right. That's perfectly right.
And that would be cats in general climbing trees in general.
Yes, you've got it. You've understood it perfectly. Now go away and practice it. Make your own sentences about whatever you like. But remember, transformational grammar is only good at telling you how to make sentences. It can't really tell you how to use them or when to use them. So you also have to read in English and listen to people speaking English to see how they use these structures.
All right. Can you recommend a book for us?
Oh, anything you like.
How about Harry Potter?
Yes, that's fine. Now, I have to run. You do your homework and let me know how you get on. Goodbye for now.
Goodbye.
What we're trying to do here is take the apparent chaos of the language and find some kind of pattern or structure that will help us to make sense of it. So far, we've looked at the basic structure of transitive verbs, that is, verbs that can take an object, in the third person form of the simple aspect of the present tense. So we can say things like, the girl asks a question. We can say it with emphasis. The girl does ask a question. And in negative form, the girl doesn't ask a question. And we can ask ourselves, does the girl ask a question? We can do the same thing in the plural, so we can make sentences like, do the girls ask questions? If you're happy with all of that, let's carry on. To get the best out of this structure, we need to add a few more ingredients to the pot. Shazam! Quantifiers. Shazam! Adjectives. Shazam! The first person of the verb. Shazam! The second person of the verb. And pronouns. And proper nouns. Uncountable nouns. Adverbs. Intransitive verbs. That'll give us a few more options. Let's take a look at those. Let's take a simple sentence like, cats like fish. We've seen how we can use a determiner with a noun. We can say, the cats, for example. Well, we can also use quantifiers like all, or some, or a lot of, or a few. They're not the same as numbers, which tell us exactly how many, but they give us an idea of quantity. We can also use adjectives to describe the noun. The cats could be big, or small, or domestic, or wild. And we can combine quantifiers and adjectives to say things like all big cats, or some small cats. That would be if we were talking about cats in general. But if there was a group of cats and some of them were big while others were small, we could add a determiner and say things like all the big cats or some of the small cats. Yes, I know. In some cases we need of and in others we don't. Well, that's the kind of thing you're going to have to check separately. I'll recommend 1 or 2 books and websites afterwards.
All right.
Now let's look at different kinds of subjects and objects. We've been looking at what are called common nouns like cat or book or something like that, but we can also use pronouns I and we, that is the first person of the verb, singular and plural, you, the second person, the same in singular and plural, and they and he, she and it, which are the third person. And when they're in object's position, I becomes me, we becomes us, you stays the same, he changes to him, she changes to her, it stays the same, and they becomes them. So we can say things like I like them, or you like us, or we like her, or they like you. But if we use he or she or it as subjects, we need to add s to the verb. So it would be he likes her, she likes him, and so on. There are two more kinds of nouns I'd like to mention at this stage. One is proper nouns, that is, names of people and places like Anna or Zane or Japan or the Eiffel Tower. These have a capital letter at the beginning, and we don't use determiners with most of them, although there are a few like the Eiffel Tower or the United Kingdom that take the.
I suppose we'll have to study that by ourselves as well.
Yes, I'm afraid so.
I know. You'll recommend some good books and websites.
That's right. There's one other thing we need to know about nouns at this stage, and that is that English makes a difference between things that can be counted and things that can't. Water, for example, isn't countable in the same way that cats are, or tables and chairs and cups. This is a complicated topic because the same thing can often be both countable and uncountable depending on the situation. We'll come back to this later on, but for now let's just notice that when a noun is uncountable, it doesn't have a plural. We can talk about cats and more cats using the plural, but usually we'll talk about water and more water in the singular. Looking at the verb, just as we can describe nouns using adjectives to say a good book or a small cat, so we can give more information about verbs using adverbs. Some adverbs go in front of the verb, like the boy often reads a book. Others go in a different position. Cats like fish very much.
But how do we know which ones go where? I think we'll just have to wait until he explains it. I hope he explains it later on. I'm a bit confused. Maybe we can find a book or a website that explains it. That's a good idea.
So far, I've been talking about transitive verbs which take an object. The boy reads the book, the cat climbs the tree, and so on. But many verbs in English are intransitive. For example, if we sleep, we don't sleep something. We just sleep. But we can talk about how we sleep, or where we sleep, and things like that. That's most of the basic information you need in order to use the present simple. It's not everything, and anyway, transformational grammar by itself isn't enough. You'll need to back up what I've told you with information from standard grammar books and websites. Here are one or two I recommend. These are useful books, full of good, clear information about how to use the language. And as for websites, well, there are so many I can't count them. Here are a few.